So we have, what we're going to have is this circle represents the finite world. Okay, that's the finite. And all of space-time continuums in that circle. This dot represents our universe. Okay? Did I say our universe? This dot represents our galaxy. Inside that is our solar system. Inside that is our Earth. There's many galaxies out there. But this is the space-time continuum. We're going to put a person here, not to size. Okay, that's a person. And that person's wondering what's outside the circle. That's the main subject. What is outside the circle? And for the history of human beings, they've all been wondering what is outside the circle. And it's just the main question of being inside a physical world. Is there something outside the physical world? Now, the first person we're going to have is going to be the atheist. And the atheist believes that there's nothing outside the physical world. This circle represents the physical world, and whatever's outside of it is the question at hand. What's outside the circle? What's outside the physical universe? So the atheist believes there's nothing there. Now, does the atheist know there's nothing there, or does the atheist believe there's nothing there? They believe there's nothing there. Why? Because you cannot know what's outside that circle. Science begins where this circle begins. And science ends where the circle ends. Hard science. There's plenty of theoretical science about what's outside the circle. But as far as hard science is, there's no way to measure with instruments of measure what's outside of space and time. Because the instrument of measure would also have to be outside space and time. And I wouldn't hold your breath for them to create an instrument of measure that's outside space and time. So naturally, it would be impossible to really know what's outside the circle with scientific measure. Is that clear? So we don't know that there's nothing outside the circle. There may be something outside the circle. For the atheist, they've chosen, basically, that there's nothing outside the circle. It's a position of faith. Basically, I never saw anything outside the circle, so therefore I don't believe in anything outside the circle. Okay, but it's a belief. They don't believe in, something being there. You had a question?
Yes. In the science, normal science, what they think that it's expansion, the universe, all this theory, but it's a limit, it's an expansion. What is behind it in science? Yeah.
It's a wild thought. No one knows. No one knows. Meaning, if you could somehow get a rocket ship that goes faster than the universe expands, so you'd break through it, where would you be? The mind can't even comprehend such a thought. Because the human mind is always couched in space and time. And so if you were able to somehow go faster than space and time and break out of the space-time continuum, where would you be? It's a wild question. We don't know. We don't know the answer to that. So the next person that I'd like to put on the board is, again, the physical world. There's the person. And outside the circle, this is what's called the agnostic. The agnostic is a much more intellectual position, to be an agnostic. And it's saying that I don't know what's there. There may be something there. There may not be something there. It's an intellectually honest position to be in. Because I'm not saying there's nothing there, and I'm not saying there's something there. I'm just saying you can't know, and therefore there may be something there. Now this introduces one of the famous mathematicians and philosophers of Europe from several hundred years ago. His name was Pascal. You guys heard of Pascal? And one of his most important philosophical contributions to human thought was Pascal's wager. You guys heard of Pascal's wager? Yeah? You heard of it, Sammy? It makes him giggle, okay? Pascal's wager looks like this. Now, Pascal was an agnostic. He was coming from a scientific perspective. He said, we can't know what's out there scientifically. So there may be God, there may not be God. So he believed that when it comes to behavior, when it comes to behavior, so you can behave as if there, yes, is a God, or there is not a God. So how you behave, you can behave either as if there is a God, or there's not a God. So he believed you should hedge your bets in case there's a God, and live your life, behave as if there is a God. That was his thing, okay? Now, of course, in the end, there either was or there wasn't, or there was or there wasn't. So the atheist says, I'm going to behave as if there isn't a God, and I'm just going to do whatever comes to me. I'm just going to do whatever I feel like. If I feel like it, I'll do it. Like Nike, right? Just do it, okay? I'm just going to do it. Whatever it is, I'll do it. So that's this person, and they're more like the atheist. And then, but the agnostic says that, I could live my life as if there's no God, but there may be one. So he believed that you should live your life as if there is one. Because in the end, after death, when one dies, so then the truth comes out, and you get to find out, first of all, if there's no death, if there's no God, then it's splat like an ant when you die. Just like an ant dies, a person dies. We bury the person. You want to be respectful of the person, but that's it. They return to the earth. There's nothing afterward. There's no soul. There's no nothing. That's if there's no God, okay? That's no God. And then, of course, if there is a God, then the soul lives on, okay? If in case there is a God. Now, what did Pascal say? Pascal said that you should behave as if there is a God, okay? He figured that was the safest bet. Why? Because if you behaved as if there is a God and there's not a God, so anyway, it's splat like an ant. It doesn't matter for eternity. Okay, in this world, you were maybe more careful, maybe you were more faithful, maybe you were more, just a better person altogether. You didn't do whatever you felt like doing. You did, you always tried to focus yourself on what would God say in this situation. And so if you're wrong and there was no God, so anyway, it's splat like an ant, it didn't matter. If there is a God, you're all set, because you were a very good boy or girl, okay? On the other hand, he holds that the person who behaves as if they're not a God, as if there isn't a God, so either it doesn't matter, splat like an ant, or as my history teacher used to say to me growing up, you've been busted, okay? You've been busted. So if the guy behaved as if there was not a God and he's right, it doesn't matter anyway, splat like an ant. But if there was a God, he's in trouble, okay? So Pascal said that for the agnostic, the way to go is to behave as if there is a God, even though you can't scientifically know. Okay, is that clear? Everyone's covered that? Okay, there's only one problem. The problem is we're Jewish. How do you hedge your bets when you have 613 commandments? Which ones you choose, which ones you not choose? And if you choose just a few of them, like a few biggies, they're huge. They're not little things. It's easy for Pascal to say, what does he have to do? Say Hail Mary on Sundays or something? What does he have to do? What does Pascal really got to do? It was an easy Pascalian wager. Makes a lot of sense when you're Christian. And what in the end is really the downside? There's no real downside. But as a Jew, what are you supposed to do and what are you supposed to not do? How do you pick and choose between commandments, which are all basically stated as equal in the Torah? And if you want to just go with the ones that carry death penalty, there's tons of them. Not that our courts ever meted out death penalties. We didn't have death penalties. But the Torah said death penalty to let you know that God's serious about this one. That God means business on this. Our courts never killed anybody for these things. Anyway, as Jews, how are we supposed to do this? And that's why you'll notice an amazing thing. You will find many Christians who are agnostics. But how many Jews, fully observant Jews, have you ever found that are agnostic? I can tell you how many I've met in my 46 years on earth, including 23 years as a rabbi. One. I met one. It was an amazing situation. I was in Toronto. It was two identical twins. Identical twins. They had both decided you can never know if there's a God. And one chose to behave his whole life as an atheist, meaning he chose to live as if there's no God. And the other said, I don't know there's God, but I'm going to hedge my bets as if there is. He lived as a fully observant Jew. The only one I've ever met. A very rare thing. And I've been meaning to ask him, because that was like, I don't know, 17 years ago that I met him. I've been meaning to ask him since, and he's since made Aliyah, which you have to be crazy to make Aliyah if you don't believe in God. So I imagine he must believe in God now, but he finally made Aliyah. And I have run into him a few times when I was like flying by on my bike. So I just kind of waved. Paul?
Can you do mitzvot without intent that there's a God?
It's interesting. This isn't intent. This is more the intent if there's a God. Like I'm putting on my tefillin in case there's a God.
Yeah, exactly. So well, I don't really know, but I'm going to put this on anyway, and I'm going to.
In case there's a God.
In case there's a God. I mean, do you get that mitzvah? Is it a mitzvah? Is it just?
You get the mitzvah. You get the mitzvah. It's not a very high mitzvah, but you get the mitzvah. Yeah, you'd still put on tefillin for God, in case there is one.
You're not saying for God. You're saying for, because I'm trying to be smart.
Right. It's a really good question. I can't answer it. The Talmud goes into a whole thing about whether mitzvahs require the intention you're bringing up or not. Can you just do a mitzvah even without the intention and get rewarded for that commandment, or do you have to have intention? Now you're bringing up a whole gray area of what if it's a in case kind of intention. It's a good question. I've never heard that answered. I'm willing to ask it though of someone greater than I am in Torah, which is not difficult to find. Okay, now so let's just finish this one off. To finish this off, if you're Jewish, you're never going to meet. I doubt you'll ever meet this guy, so you'll never meet an agnostic who keeps all of Judaism.
You don't want to introduce us?
I'll find him myself. Barely remember the guy's name.
It would be difficult to, I mean, it would be.
I know his name. What?
It would be a bit unpleasant to be doing all of it. I mean, it would be.
How about torturous? How about torturous? Do you guys know how many laws there are in Judaism? Okay, there's 613 commandments, but the Torah doesn't describe any of them. So you got to have laws. So, like for example, if every commandment's a hyperlink and you click on it and it takes you to a website to explain how to do it, we figured it out because the Rambam lists how to do each commandment. 55,000 laws. As an agnostic, forget about it. You'll never do it. You'll never do it. You either believe or you're not going to do it. What?
I think there can be comfort in the rituals and in the sense.
Oh, the Hanukkah candles, Shabbos candles.
All of it can kind of give a sense of something but not believing.
It's just asking too much, though. You got to live near shul. Okay, some places, like perhaps Cape Town, are beautiful places to live near shul. There's a lot of other cities in the world where living near shul is really yucky, and there's beautiful suburbs where you can have neighbors like Biffy and Chris, and you can live a beautiful life, and then just drive into shul when you want to go to shul. But if you actually keep the commandments and keep Shabbat, you have to live, no matter how much money you have, you got to live in some dingy inner city place where all the Jews live. So if it's just a matter of there may or may not be a God, slicha, I'm going to live out with Biffy and Chris. Why should I live in a jungle? You understand? Like there's commandments and they're costly and they can affect your whole lifestyle and standard of living and it certainly narrows the dating pool down to like a minimum. I mean, if you live in a country that has Gentiles, your dating pool just went from like that to like that. Anyway, it's really, I mean, you're going to buy this cosmic vegetation every Sukkot. Okay, you got this lulav, a palm, an unopened palm frond. Okay, it's a stick basically. It's like you're like Luke Skywalker with this thing. Okay, you've got a citron fruit. You know how much I spend on my citron fruit? Yeah, it's not a lemon in a fancy suit. Okay, it's really expensive. And okay, you can get a cheaper citron fruit, but I spend, I don't know how much, anywhere from $100 to $150 on a citron fruit. That like, yeah, you can't even like, it'll be worthless in a week. But no, I gotta have a perfect citron fruit. The reason why I spend so much on my citron fruit is I want a particularly beautiful citron fruit. Because how many people get to serve God by buying a fruit? How often you get a chance like that? So you're gonna buy like the cheapo? Like this is my chance to serve God by buying a piece of fruit? So I search around for like the top fruit. You know, I want like the most beautiful fruit, no spots, you know, built just right, you know, the shape's perfect, the color's perfect. It's gotta be the right etrog, you know? Because that's my chance. You know, I didn't skimp on money when it came to my car stereo. You know, the 11 speakers, 2 amplifiers, you know. I had my stereo custom built to go to 11. Mine goes to 11, okay? So I did not like go for the bargain stereo. I went for the best equipment I could find. Yeah, so now I got a chance to buy a piece of fruit for God. I didn't know God liked fruit, you know, but apparently God likes fruit, and I buy the best one I could find. So anyway, but of course, you know, it's just crazy spending all this money on a piece of fruit. And not to mention the fact that for the next week, I have to live in a thatched hut. Like, it doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter how comfortable your house is. It doesn't matter if you live in some like crime-filled neighborhood. You still have to move out of your house and into a thatched hut. You could have the best alarm system. You could have the best doors, reinforced steel, amazing lock bolts. You know, you can have to go to South Africa. You can have the, what is that stuff? The electric wiring on your fencing and stuff that everyone has down there. Sorry, you got to move out. You got to go live in your thatched hut for a week. You have to eat there, drink there, sleep there, party there. Everything you do is in there, except for going to the bathroom. Out of this will come for that. Okay. You know what CNN once put on the news? It was the border of East and West Jerusalem. East is where the Arabs live, and West is where the Jews live. So the border of it is a big Breslev community. It's a Hasidic group, Breslev. And that's the border. I mean, there's a lot of communities that border, but CNN was during the Intifada, like 10 years ago, and 12 years ago, and the Jews are all in the middle. I mean, it's crazy. Like buses are blowing up, Molotov cocktails, like rocks are being thrown everywhere. It's crazy. Jerusalem was crazy then. And what are the Hasidim doing on the border with East Jerusalem? They're building their sukkahs to move outdoors because God's our protection. I mean, after on Yom Kippur, 4 days earlier on Yom Kippur, you just put all your faith in God. God's number one. There's nothing else but God. Einod milvado, there's nothing but God. So now you put your money where your mouth is. You go, let's see you move outdoors. Let's see you sleep outdoors for a week in a thatched hut in the middle of an intifada. So you know what CNN showed these Hasidim? It was just a great movie. You know, they were videoing and they're nailing up their sukkahs. And in the news they said, Orthodox Jews boarding up their homes during the intifada. They did. I saw it myself. People sent around the clip. And the Orthodox Jews boarding up their homes. They were doing the exact opposite. They were moving out of their homes and living behind cardboard. Yeah? Because God is our protection. This is risky behavior. Not to mention being fruitful and multiplying. Being fruitful and multiplying can be pretty dangerous. You know, there's a lot of dangers involved with that. Birth control is a lot safer than just going for the multiple kid situation. Okay, everyone should be blessed with fertility and have kids. Say amen. Amen. But there's some people are married to Fertile Myrtle, and he's, Fertile Fred, and she just keeps winding up getting pregnant. You know, and I run seminars. I had several of the guys. We had a guy last night. He's the youngest of 13. Youngest of 13 kids in my seminar. I'm sure there's a couple other bigger families. He just is the one that told us. Point is, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. You're risking your life with that. Although the truth is the commandment's on the man, being fruitful and multiplying, because God can't command a woman to put herself in danger. Which is interesting. The commandment of being fruitful and multiplying is only upon the man. So if a woman who lives her life and doesn't have children, she's not busted. But if it's a man, he's been busted. Yeah, he's been busted. And by the way, while we're on that commandment, a good reason to have several is you only fulfill the commandment if you have a son and a daughter at the time you die. But if they don't outlive you, you don't fulfill the commandment also. It's really a weird commandment that way. They have to outlive you. So you got to you can have a boy and a girl, and then you got to just I don't know, put them in a padded cell for take really good care of them for, I don't know, or then jump off a bridge or something, I don't know. Yeah, that doesn't work either. That doesn't work either. Suicide locks someone in forever. You never leave. In suicide, you choose anything you want in life, the one thing you're never allowed to choose is when your life ends. And the punishment for that, our Kabbalists teach us, is you never leave. Because if you know any Kabbalah, there's all these parallel worlds. We're in the bottom of all these parallel worlds. And a lot of the parallel worlds are very fine, thin, worlds that look just like ours. There's ones right above us that are just like ours, which might explain deja vu a little bit, because I think sometimes, as they call it in the Matrix, a glitch in the Matrix, but there's worlds just like ours, where everything's going on. You got Sam smiling, Yosef sitting, there's a world that looks just like ours. There could be other people in this room right now, for all we know, because they would be in here. We can't see them, pat, pat, pat. You can't see the guys, but they're in here. Sorry about that. And they, what'd you say?
I think that was a woman.
It was a woman. So,
Fertile Myrtle, I think.
So anyway, just so I like that people should know, because it's actually saved a lot of lives. I've met a lot of Jews who had some horrible situation. They wanted to end their life, but they refused to because they knew they would be caught in that loop forever. So the one thing you can't choose in your world of free choice is when you leave. You have to stay in for the whole program. Now, where were we? I think we said enough about this, and our main point was that that's the agnostic, okay? Now the next is the idolater. The idolater, I got to make him a little smaller because he believes in, he's doing this rain dance right now. But, okay, but they believe in the moon and the sun. They believe in stuff that's inside the system. And that's not 100% accurate, because they do believe in a whole metaphysical realm. There is a whole metaphysical realm that's outside space-time. So they do believe in a metaphysical realm, but it's still part of the universe. For example, people who go to India to go get all spiritual in India, so they are studying the metaphysical stuff. Buddhists study. They don't just sit there going all day. They actually study books, and they learn great details about the metaphysical world. So there's a physical world, there's a metaphysical world, but then there's a creator of those worlds called God. We're into God, and they're into becoming one with the universe. Universe meaning both the physical aspects of the universe and the metaphysical aspects of the universe. To become one with the universe. To become one with the river. So that someone steps on your foot and you can say to them, you stepped on our foot. Okay? It's our foot. Okay? You're at one with the universe. That's their goal. But in Judaism, that's a beautiful thing to be one with the universe, but we want to be one with God, who creates the universe. Now, Buddhists would say that's a little arrogant. You think the creator of heaven and earth, heaven meaning the metaphysical and earth the physical, you think the creator of heaven and earth wants to have a relationship with you? Ha! You're having an ego problem, man. You think the creator of the universe is going to have a relationship with you? And our answer is, yeah. And then their question is, why? Why would he? And we say, well, normally we wouldn't have thought so, but because we already rendezvoused with God at Sinai, we now know that God's a personal God. God has great interest in his creation. And that you can have a relationship with God. And you'll notice throughout the world that most pagan cultures actually do believe there's a creator of it all. They just don't believe you can have a relationship with it. And we wouldn't have known either had it not been for prophetic experiences of our nation at Sinai. That's how we know. Otherwise, we wouldn't know. It's a personal God. Yes?
Can we be one with the universe and also be one with God? Like, I don't see why
That is the goal. Are you kidding? Our great Kabbalists are totally into being one with the universe, too.
So they're also Buddha?
Buddha means enlightened, and yes, they're also enlightened, meaning they've become unattached selfishly to the world, and they are one with the world, both physical and metaphysical, but their whole allegiance, where their heart is spent, is with God. So Buddha, the word Buddha means enlightenment. Enlightenment's a stage on the journey of Jacob's ladder toward God. That's part of the ladder to God. But there's much higher stages, top being obviously prophecy. But
It's not like
Gesundheit.
as religious Jews, like, you don't skip over being one with the universe to get to God. If you're saying it's a ladder, then you're kind of doing both, right?
Right.
So you could go to India, feel all that spirituality, whatever it is, and still believe in God and serve God.
Sure. You could. Yeah. It's ideal not to. Just that because the people who will lead you to the enlightenment are probably steeped like tea bags in idolatry. And those shouldn't be your teachers. They may be amazing teachers at finding enlightenment, but I personally, if I can state my opinion, even if someone's teaching you something really important, a really important lesson about life, their life is the biggest lesson. It's more than the words they say. So for us, at least as Jews, and I can certainly say for myself, that I've always been really careful who teaches me, even my Torah. Even my Torah. And I remember when I got married, and I'd become Hasidic, and so now I'm asking my questions to a Hasidic rabbi. And so I asked my Hasidic rabbi how he felt about me learning from a Talmud rabbi who gives his examples often using TV shows and baseball games and all kinds of stuff that is just way outside the realm of Torah. How did he feel about that? And he says, well, why would you want to learn with him in the first place? I mean, anyone can teach you Talmud. I said, well, he's a teacher who covers lots of ground. Like, we learn vast amounts. In one sitting, we could learn 7 pages of Talmud, which is very rare to find anyone like that. So I said, because I want to cover a lot of ground, and there's no one who teaches like him. So you know what he said? He said, you can go to him in a year. But your first year of marriage, make sure who you're getting your Torah from is someone who's just their mind and hearts and all their examples are just totally in the world of sanctity and Torah. After that year, come back to me and we'll see where you're at. And if you really want to learn those, like that vast amount of Torah, so you can go back to him and let him teach you and use, whatever example and wherever his head's at, which was all over the place. If you don't mind having his head all over the place, but you can go to him. Just don't go this year. So I'm saying even in the Torah world, we're sensitive to who we get our Torah from. You only really want your information from people who are living pure, amazing lives. That's what you want. You want your information. Now, of course, you can't always get it. You can't always be a snob about it. And like sometimes the person teaching you, whatever they're teaching you is, a weirdo or something. You want to learn piano, and the only piano teacher in town is, just some like freaky dude. Okay. He's like wiping frog sauce off his chin whenever you get there for the piano lesson. Yeah, and it's like, why do you have frog sauce on your chin? He's like, let's not discuss my diet, and you're just like, oh, let's just learn piano, I guess, and you know what I'm saying? You want to learn yoga. Yoga is a great example. You want to learn yoga, what are you going to do? I mean, most yoga teachers are like totally involved in like all kinds of Sanskrit and various, Hindu things, and and there's some chants and there's some meditation and there's using all kinds of techniques. And so, whoa, you want to learn yoga, man, you better learn yoga with someone who is very careful to clean the yoga clear, totally clear of any of that Hindu stuff. You do not want to get anywhere near that. So otherwise, just skip yoga. Go do Pilates or something. Okay, you can go do Pilates. Much better do Pilates than yoga, even if yoga gives all this centering and grounding and like, you really get to an amazing place with yoga that you're not going to get to with Pilates. But let go of that if your yoga teacher isn't coming from a very clean place. And obviously the yoga teacher would have to be Jewish, and the yoga teacher would have to know enough of the yoga stuff that's dangerous. They have to know yoga. They also have to know some Torah to know what's kosher and what's not kosher. And then let them guide you in yoga. Thank God we're in Jerusalem. Jerusalem has actually some amazing yoga teachers who are fully observant, amazing, very clean yoga people. So we actually have a yoga class that our staff goes to on Wednesdays at 5, but this teacher is like amazingly clean for that reason. But otherwise, we are very careful, and especially when it comes to idolatrous cultures and activities. Clear? We're clear with all that? Well, there he is. Okay, let's move on. Okay, our next guy. Our next guy is his head comes out of his arm for some reason. This person, or he's looking down, but really he's looking up. This person is the believer. I'm going to use squiggly lines for what's outside the circle. Okay, this is the believer. Okay, this person believes that there's something outside the circle. Okay, it's a believer. And the believer makes a lot of sense. Because it's not just belief, it's common sense. Worlds don't make themselves. We've been through all this stuff. Worlds don't make themselves. It's common sense that the world was made. Everything else was made. My cup was made, the table was made. Yeah, everything else in the world is made. So why would we ever think that the world itself wasn't made? Everything comes from something, cause and effect. Anything you'll ever look at in the entire physical world is an effect of a previous cause. So why would you think the world itself didn't have a cause? It has to have a primal causer. And this is just pure common sense. We may not know what it is. In fact, we know we don't know what it is. But it is something. Worlds don't make themselves. So whatever it is that made this world, we happen to call it God. So the believer isn't just about belief. The believer is really a knower in a way. What kind of knowledge? Absolute or deductive? It's a deductive knowledge. That person can't go outside, as we spoke about earlier. He can't pop outside the world to see what's there, yeah, to go see God. That person most likely will never get prophecy, because a prophet also knows absolutely. That person's probably locked into the space-time continuum as we are, but can deduce that just like nothing else creates itself, certainly the Creator didn't. Yeah, certainly the world didn't create itself. Worlds don't make themselves. There's nothing in this world that anyone's ever discovered that has a creative capacity to make itself from absolute nothingness. Absolute nothingness creates absolutely nothing. But the fact is that this world comes from absolute nothingness. So that absolute nothingness must be God. It must be some kind of consciousness that chose to create the world. And we are the result of the nothingness deciding to create somethingness. That's the believer. Now, you're probably thinking that this is Judaism already. It's not Judaism. We're going to distinguish believers and believers.
That's called deism.
Okay, you could call it deism. But I'm going to go again. I'm going to make it look just the same. Now, this believer is what I'd like to call a soft-core monotheist, okay? A soft-core monotheist, which means that this person believes there's one God. It's like the monotheism we learned in elementary school, the belief in one God. You guys learned that in elementary school? We were taught like Abraham was the first monotheist, which also isn't true. When you think Noah was a polytheist? Noah lived 10 generations earlier. He was certainly a monotheist. Monotheism on the soft core level is this guy here believes there is a being out there and there's one of him, one God, okay? Whereas Judaism, which is what I like to call hardcore monotheism, is not the belief in one God. In fact, nowhere in our Torah does it ever say that there's one God. Do you know that? Nowhere in the Torah. Ten Commandments certainly doesn't say that there's one God. Ten Commandments just says, I'm the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt. That there is a God.
Yeah, there's no other
It
God.
doesn't discuss numbers at all there. Yeah. Shema Yisrael also doesn't say there's one God. Shema Yisrael says that God is one. Yeah. Yeah, Lo Yelecha is really problematic. There it's already admitting there's others. That's a problem. You know, Lo Yelecha is the second of the Ten Commandments. It says don't believe in any of the other things out there. Who said anything about anything else? Like our Torah, if anything, is like incriminating. You know, it's like, it's actually, you know, if you don't mind, with all the other gods, just don't like give your flower offerings to them or don't bow down to them or anything. So nowhere in the Torah says that there's one God, and if anything, it mentions others.
Why would it do that?
What?
Why would it do that?
Because Judaism is not the belief in one God. Judaism is the belief that God is one. So what should be different in these pictures? You see, infinite, that which is outside space and time, that's totally unlimited by space and time, has been limited. If you look at this picture, you see there's something wrong with this picture? Do you see how the infinite's been kind of pushed out? Okay, I could keep going, but I'm like trying to donate to Asher by not using more ink. Okay? I mean, I could keep going. There's not enough whiteboard in the world to keep going, but what's the problem? That it stops. It's limited by space and time. I have limited God to outside the space-time continuum, which is what they do. This is what the believers do, the softcore monotheists. That we exist here imperatively, and we believe there's a God out there. And that's why I call it believers. Because they believe there's a God out there, but they think we're real. We're real, and there's a God out there that makes us. Listen carefully what hardcore monotheism is about. You start to float away a little bit. Okay, take your protein pill and put your helmet on. 10, 9, ready? This being is infinite. It's unlimited by space and time, and therefore, where do the squiggly lines have to go? They have to come inside. This is Major Tom DeGrasse Control. I'm feeling pretty still. And I think my spaceship knows which way to go. Hardcore monotheism. Okay? God is one. There is nothing else. And that's exactly what the Torah says. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God. It doesn't say there's one of them. It says he is one. Later in the Torah, it says, Einod milvado. There is nothing else. So we don't exist. So if you've been wondering how nothing created something, it didn't. Like that song? We don't really exist. I mean, we do, but only in as much as God's thinking us up into existence. Because God is undifferentiated oneness. It is all there is and is thinking up reality around us. It's literally, another way of saying it is we're in a giant, like amazingly complex moving hologram, and your body right now is an avatar. It's an avatar for your soul. You actually have a soul that's totally part of the oneness of Hashem, but you are now being avatared into the system. But you're not even in this system. 99.9% of you is out of the system. It's only 0.1% of you that's even interfacing with your body right now. There's a tiny amount of you that's interfaced right now. Most of you is just totally out of the system. And part of transcending this world is getting more in touch with that part of you called the soul. There's 5 aspects to it. There's the Yechida, that's way out there. There's the Chaya, also out there. The Neshama, which is already getting into here. And then there's the Ruach, and then there's the Nefesh. And the very bottom of the Nefesh has a thin little membrane that's interfaced with your with your cerebral cortex, with all your neurons that receive all the stimulus of your daily lives. So you're really, no offense, mostly dead. And when you actually die, when the physical body dies, then the last little membrane just kind of goes, whoop, and you're like, whoa! And you're in this like incredible, I'm not going to end the sentence because I don't know what it is, but you're in this, you're back in the consciousness. You're back inside the consciousness of God. Right now, you're in your own consciousness. And our problem is we've just been brainwashed by 2,000 years of Western civilization that you begin and end right there. That's all you are, is what you can see in a mirror. And after Darwin, it went Darwin and then Calvin Klein underwear commercials, okay? And then Darwin said, you're basically a hairless ape, and Calvin Klein proved it on the billboards, okay? And that's all you are. They've got everyone believing it. Go into town. Look at all the teenagers. Look at all the adults, actually. This is Israel. The adults dress a lot like the teenagers. So that's what they got us believing. But not me, not my wife, not my daughters. We are massive. We are gigantic. We are these incredible ancient beings that have been, okay, we've been locked into this matrix here, but I can live my life in the matrix, totally out of the matrix. And let the Torah inform my day. And how I live my day, I let the Torah inform me. So I don't want to be locked in. I don't want to be in some lockdown, mind-numbing lock. I refuse. I'm not interested. I don't want their products that I'll buy more of because I just did it. Just do it. So I just did it, so now I feel terrible because I just totally cut myself off spiritually by doing it. Meaning not necessarily totally cut off, but I ignored my soul. So now my soul's feeling really like it's on sleep mode. So now I'm feeling all bad because who can feel good when the one little membrane of you, that's the spiritual part of you, has been ignored. So you feel terrible, and what do? You go make more purchases. You go buy something, you'll feel better. The whole system. The whole system. They have to keep us believing we're small. In the 1960s, in America, there was a whole movement of these hippies who were taking shamanic substances. They were taking shamanic substances, whether it was with Native American Indians or it was stuff from Peru, from the Yamamama Indians or the different Gesundheit. They got a hold of the stuff that medicine chiefs, only medicine chiefs in tribes throughout the planet, because God put these things in every continent. Yeah. So they took those things, but who was it? It was just a bunch of anti-Vietnam War kids in America who were in this mind-numbing lockdown from the 1950s with the slick back hair and the 25-foot Cadillacs and the post-war good times, And they were just like the children of those people, and they're just like, no way. No way. And so what happened was they got a hold of these shamanistic types of things. And literally 45 minutes after ingesting the thing, they realized how big they were. They were like, wow, I'm incredibly powerful. I'm huge. I'm not this little thing that society said I was, or that my parents think we are. I'm gigantic. Well, it didn't take long for the US government to realize that it's impossible to govern really big people, especially when you have a whole generation of them. So they made it illegal. It was all legal. It was all completely, it's your body. You want to go hang out with Native Americans, go for it. What are we going to stop you? And then they realized, we better stop them. You can't govern people who think they're big. You can only govern people who are small. And so you know what happened? Some of the geniuses of all these shamanic type dudes said, okay, it's illegal, so we won't do that. We'll just create personal computers instead. Go look, go Google images of the people who started Microsoft. Go Go Google images, the people who started Apple. Google image those people. You will see hardcore beatnik hippies, okay, whose bloodstream could probably turn on the whole Middle East, yeah, with whatever was cruising through their bloodstream at the time. They're the ones who started it. And I bet you they had these little babies in mind right at the beginning. Because when they created those personal computers, these guys were thinking way out of the box because they were already big. They already had these in mind. And they knew somehow that these would take down countries. With these, you can be very, very powerful. And the governments had a little trouble keeping up, but they finally figured out how to get into here too, to make sure you can't be big. And they want in. And so that's the big fight now. If you go on to, who's that? What's that news station, that guy? Drudge. You go on the Drudge Report. Every Drudge Report has something about the race between personal liberty of your own private life and your own giganticness that you can create just on your own little device. And the difference you can make as an individual versus the government's race to stay in control of humanity, to keep you small. Why are we discussing all this? Because Judaism, for the last 3,326 years, has been teaching the world that you are giant, and governments have never been able to quite deal with that. We are very hard to govern. Jews are very hard to govern. And next time you want to judge the ultra-Orthodox for their not being able to get along with the state of Israel, just remember this class. We're ungovernable. Jews who actually keep the Torah, Jews who honor the soul, are ungovernable. They're giant people. The only people they could possibly be governed by would be a really holy king who not only carries one Torah with him at all times, but he's written another Torah that he keeps at home. And he is completely under the law. He is not above the law. He is under the law. Give us a leader like that, we're in. Until then, we're not going to be small. We are giant. And we live giant. Clear till now? Okay, good stuff. Have a beautiful day.